wanted to have a couple comments as well, thanking you for your talk. So yeah.
Yeah, you guys are welcome. All right. I hope you guys can see the presentation. All right, then here we go. Categorical Wild West, the need to establish standards. This study is currently work in progress, and it focuses on how establishing standards is needed to separate categories of gamers and how it will benefit gaming and esports research. The growth of gaming and esports has spurred increased academic interest, and due to the research being in its infancy, best practices and standards are not yet established. Some of the research, however, has shown that difference in groups of gamers can be distinguished across various dimensions, such as cognitive features, health, behaviors, and personality traits. So, for instance, we have esports athlete, if we take that at one category, and recreational gamers, as I just did in the previous study or presentation. Then there are research that shows that we can distinguish them across these different dimensions. However, these differences are yet to be translated into standards when it comes to sampling and describing study samples or categorizing groups of these gamers. This manifests itself in a sufficient quality and quantity of sampling information. Take, for instance, the examples shown in this table. Sample information may include Korean esports players who play online games as a leisure activity, or the sample consisting of high school students, or the accumulated experience of players in one game season. All these samples were either tamed esports athletes or e-athletes. However, it can be argued that none of these descriptions necessarily fit the category of what we think of esports athletes. Moreover, terminologies such as hardcore gamers, recreational gamers, casual gamers, etc. exist. Furthermore, in a currently conducting study with a colleague of mine, we found that 14.9% of the samples were unspecified, meaning they could not be categorized as either esports athlete or recreational gamer due to the lack of or even absence of any sample information. Another part of the issue is that there are no clear boundaries between each category of gamers, as well as measures to actually identify them, for instance, using demographic information, in-game or tournament rank, or experiences. These issues contribute to the inconsistent sampling and subjectivity when comparing study results within the field of esports or gaming in a broader sense. And as pointed out by Pink et al., it is not enough to assume that the literature, which predominantly reports on full-time professional or elite amateur athletes, is directly transferable to semi-professional situations. Hence, study results from, let's say, recreational gamers may not be applicable to esports athletes and vice versa, because there are differences across these various dimensions I mentioned earlier. The issue has recently been identified in multiple studies, such as Mendoza et al., Paulus et al., and Bubna et al. Previous research, however, has several limitations when tackling this issue. For instance, Mendoza et al. From 2023 stated that they did not include alternatives for the term esports, such as competitive gaming, in their search string. This likely led to a smaller and incomplete sample for their categorization. And lastly, the study from Paulus et al. Focused on elite esports samples, which is like the upper hierarchy of esports players and not the broader spectrum of esports or gaming samples. Therefore, the purpose of this work is to systematically review the literature and inform about the information that researchers use to report esports samples and address the gaps identified in these previous reviews. The research questions are, first, what descriptive information is provided when reporting esports samples? And number two, what categories have been adopted to date when addressing such samples? The study employs the methodology of a systematic review using the PRISMA guidelines. The search string is based on other previous reviews and has been optimized, and each keyword has tested and where it was removed if it yielded no meaningful results. So we have like this very optimized search string that is based on previous research, but also always provides findings. So this is something that can also be used later in future research. And the following databases will be searched, which is Web of Science, or were searched: Web of Science, EBSCOhost, and Science Direct. A few words on the inclusion criteria. We only included studies that are peer-reviewed, original articles, empirical, and written in English. The study is currently in the screening phase, and within the full paper, the main study outcomes will be reported, as well as characteristics of all relevant literature, and we will also highlight emerging trends within this study. However, what I can say so far is that preliminary results have already shown that a high degree of inconsistency and variance within the literature exists with regards to the terminology of gamers, the categorization, and the characteristics or measures used to characterize them. Regarding a future research agenda, the study results will also useful in narrowing down and adopting a categorization of esports sample. So this is kind of like the overarching goal, having different categories and exactly knowing which characteristics, which measures should be used when conducting a research, when conducting sampling, to make it even better comparable in the future. So it's kind of like a blueprint. Furthermore, the study can act, as I said, as a blueprint for future studies on what sample information should be used when reporting esports samples, and also similar to previous study with a broader scope. The study results will also help to establish the much needed standards within the field to counteract the categorical Wild West I just explained. And let's close out this presentation by doing a short recap what the study is about. Due to esports being in its infancy, standards aren't established yet. This leads to inconsistent and inadequate sample information and a Wild West when it comes to terminologies, categories, and determining which characteristics should be used to group gamers. Furthermore, reviews on the issue have severe limitations, such as their search string and focus. And in order to advance the literature and achieve the objectives of the study, the PRISMA guidelines are employed. And the study results will report main outcomes, characteristics, as well as emergent trends. Lastly, future research will be able to better categorize esports samples and use the study results as a blueprint to report sample information with the intent to establish standards within the field. And with that, once again, thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to questions and feedback anyone has.
Thank you very much, Christian. It doesn't look like we have any questions yet in chat for that one. But still, very interesting talk, and thank you very much for doing 2 back-to-back as well. Have you got
Of
any
course,
sort of
thank you
closing
very much.
remarks or anything like you'd like to finish off on?
Closing remarks. I wish you guys a very pleasant, full rest of the day, rest of the week, and let's hope for some great presentations.
Thank you very much, Christian. Just on that, we have had a quick question from Dad EFX, who says,
Absolutely.
that's a keen insight you provide. That's how you taxonomically define types of players isn't relevant only to results reporting, but additionally affects participant recruitment in studies. What would you recommend as a term to use to optimize participant recruitment?
It really depends on what the goal of the study is. I think at least what I have done in my recent research, is to use at least 2 different categories. The one is esports athlete and recreational gamers. So I think this is a very good starting point. And some of the characteristics I think we should be using is like, have they played for a competitive team? Have they had any success? Meaning, have they earned any money? Do we know if they have done it part-time, full-time? Whereas recreational gamers have a different type of motivation. If you have listened to the talk before, then this came also through the interviews, where they stated that esports athletes, they play because they want to climb, they want to learn, whereas the recreational gamers said that their motivation is just to sit down and have fun. And I think this is a very important distinction, and some of the very important characteristics we should be using is the motivation. Why do people play? Do they want to get better? Do they want to achieve a specific goal, professionalizing, or do they just play for fun because they want to relax from work?
Absolutely, yeah. Really interesting point of view on that, and how it can go back into the definitions of play and why people play, essentially. So, yeah, thank you very much for your presentations, Christian, and thank you for doing 2 back-to-back as well.
Thank you very
that
much.
is unfortunately all we have time for here from University of Staffordshire, but we will be taking a bit of a longer break now to hand over to Mittweida University over in Germany, where they are hosting the panel, which is titled Germany's University Esports. So please stick around for that. That's due to start at 2 p.m. And thank you for joining us so far this morning.